Is Indrid Cold a little green man living in the caverns of Carter Cave State Park? Or is he a ghost floating around downtown Ashland, Kentucky? I'm author Gwen Alyce Clayton, and the answer is probably neither. But I'm a huge fan of the show Hellier, and I live in Ashland. Since I write paranormal fiction, I thought it would be fun to do a Write With Me episode as part 3 of my Disabled Splorer series. Hellier is a docuseries set in eastern Kentucky. The gang try to find these little green goblins that live in the abandoned mines and caves of the Bluegrass State. I watched this series 3 times when I lived in Indiana, but now that I actually live in Ashland, Kentucky, the series has a whole new meaning for me. As much as I would love to search the caves myself, I'm disabled, so cave exploration is not really an accessible activity for me. And although I'm not wheelchair bound, I do have mobility issues that prevent me from climbing stairs, traversing steep, narrow walkways, or negotiating uneven terrain, or being on my feet for long periods of time. Nonetheless, I still love to get out in nature and let my imagination run wild. In the Hellier series, they deal with 2 different types of strange phenomena. One is an alien named Indrid Cold that has visited West Virginia from the planet Lanulos. The second is the little green goblins that supposedly, we don't know if they're ultra-terrestrials or if they're extraterrestrials or what they are, but anyhow, they're strange. It's a very convoluted storyline, but I love this show because there are so many rabbit holes to splunk down, and it's just so interesting, and there's just so much to it. So I'm writing my own story about it. The Hellier gang used the book Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts, this book right here, by Alan H. Greenfield, to read an interview with a person going by the pseudonym Terry R. Wrist, who claims to have used the cipher to deduce the whereabouts of Indrid Cold's secret Earth-based hideout. I ordered the paperback from Conquest Books in Ashland and read the whole thing cover to cover. It went way over my head and triggered my dyscalculus, so I went back to season 2, episode 2, where the gang was actually here in Ashland. Executive producer Carl Pfeiffer believes that Terry Wrist found Indrid Cold living in a ramshackle house here in Ashland. Let me read you the section that led him to that conclusion. I'm leaving other values out I used in order to protect Mr. Cold, but from this, I began looking near the Ohio-West Virginia line, the Mothman area, for a church, 112 also yields All House of God, with a graveyard adjacent, and the dead, near the Kentucky-Ohio-West Virginia border along US 52, near a location where Mothman had literally been sighted flapping across Highway 52. I found such a church next to a restaurant called The Wagon Wheel, with a churchyard on the other side and an address related to I Am 49 Place. I won't be more specific. There was one little ramshackle house with the words and signs all over it about colds and stars and the like. I get nothing out of that. I have no idea what that means, but whatever. Somehow, Carl believes that Indrid Cold is living here in Ashland, Kentucky, so we're going to go with it. Pfeiffer pointed out the following places that he believed meant Cold was here. Highway 52, which is across the river in Ohio. Highway 52 also goes through West Virginia. It does not go through this part of Kentucky, though. The First Baptist Church on the corner of 17th and Winchester. Across the street from that is the old post office. The Adina burial mounds are at Ashland Central Park. There used to be a restaurant called Hall's Wagon Wheel located at 123 17th Street on the corner of Greenup Avenue. It's now a vacant lot. And the Old Poge Masonic Lodge. I also want to point out that the Parsons sidewalk the Hellier gang passed used to be Parsons Department Store. It's now the Highlands History Museum and Discovery Center. I stopped inside this past weekend and saw a diorama of the ancient civilizations and a pair of alien-themed socks in the gift shop. Synchronicity, perhaps? My husband Eddie and I went to the tri-state markers for each of the 3 states. Burlington, Ohio has a church that's adjacent to a graveyard, and it's down the street from South Point where the 3-state park is. There's also Canova, West Virginia, and Catlettsburg, Kentucky. Those are the actual convergence points where the Ohio and Big Sandy rivers meet. To me, that qualifies as the space between, like they talk about in the show. But how does this all relate to the caves? In season 2, episode 9 of Hellier, hypnotist Lonnie Scott puts Carl Pfeiffer in a trance where he says the little green men are the gatekeepers, guarding the aforementioned space between. He specifically says, if you find the fountain, you found the gateway. Now, he was talking about the caves in Somerset, Kentucky, but we can find them at Carter Cave State Park in Olive Hill, which is about half an hour west of Ashland. It's interesting to note that the logo for Carter Cave State Park is a little green man wearing a hard hat. Later in that same episode, investigator Tyler Strand is doing a spirit box session that tells him to point to the story. Try not to ruin the story. And then he goes on, I always talked about peace for years. So that's going to come into play later on with my story. So hold on to that nugget for a minute. The show frequently references the concepts of marginality and liminality. To me, there's no better example of those 2 words than the Underground Railroad. And this tri-state area was key during that whole era. West Virginia became a state over the issue of slavery. They didn't want to be part of the slave state of Virginia, so in 1861, they started the process to become part of the Union. And on June 20th, 1863, the state of West Virginia was officially formed. Kentucky was a major dropping off point for runaway slaves. They would cross the Ohio River and flee into Cincinnati, which is where Hellier founders Greg and Dana Newkirk live today. So the borders of these 3 states are significant to the story. You got to think of all the emotional imprints that have been placed in that area. Plus, it's the convergence of the Ohio and Canova rivers. So the convergence of rivers is also a metaphysical symbol. One more thing I want to point out. Tanya Derenberger, who is one of the people who claims to have met Indrid Cold, published a book in 2017 called Beyond Lanulos. In chapter 12, she writes, by now you are probably wondering what has become of Indrid Cold, Carl Ardo, and Demo Hassan and their families. Since they live very long lives on Lanulos, Indrid Cold is the ripe old age of 95. But then on September 18th, 2018, she posted on Facebook that he had died at the age of 92. So the math doesn't add up, but we're going to run with it anyway. And since I'm a paranormal writer, I'm going to go with the idea that Indrid Cold is now a ghost living a happy retirement in the Carter Caves. Tanya is the daughter of Woodrow Derenberger, who wrote Visitors from Lanulos. Dark places are havens for solitude and introspection. You're blinded when you go in because your pupils dilate, and then when you try to leave, they can't constrict back. Bats and other creatures that live in caves are often blind because they can't get their pupils to constrict back and see the light. That blindness could explain why these little green goblins leave their shelters at night. And it's commonly believed that if you lose one sense, like vision, you are likely to develop extrasensory powers like telepathy or precognition. So, I'm taking all of this and running with it. Please note, I am writing fiction. I have never met Indrid Cold. I've never seen any little green goblins. I'm just a disabled writer with an overactive imagination and a total Hellier fangirl. So let's put together a sequence and see what we can come up with, shall we? The ritual. Hail to the gatekeepers of the North, by the powers of freedom and liberty. We seek communitas with you, so we may share our knowledge and gain better understanding. We come in peace. Hail and welcome. Hail to the gatekeepers of the Southeast, by the powers of honor and integrity. We seek communitas with you, so we may share our knowledge and gain better understanding. We come in peace. Hail and welcome. Hail to the gatekeepers of the West, by the powers of charity and compassion. We seek communitas with you, so we may share our knowledge and gain better understanding. We come in peace. Hail and welcome. As above, so below. Open the gates, open the gates, open the gates. The gates are open. Communitas has begun. Hail, freighter Vulcan, blacksmith who forged the 5 rods of the elements, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Hail, soarer Venus, bringer of love and beauty, who offers the ash leaf as a sign of peace and goodwill toward all. We are honored by your presence today. Do you have a message for us on this auspicious afternoon? We will send you a messenger, someone who will show you the way to enlightenment. Meet him at Central Park tomorrow before sundown, and he will give you further instructions. The next evening. Mr. Cold, I presume. My friends call me Indrid. Come with me. I have something to show you. My physical body is now stardust, scattered into 112,000 pieces of ash floating among the heavens. But my spirit lives on in the caves of northeast Kentucky. The fountain flows like a sluice box, with precious minerals left in its sediment. The creek refreshes my soul and quenches my thirst for serenity. In between the rocks, I find a special place where liminality is embraced like a child's favorite blanket. I am the new gatekeeper of the caves. To enter, one must approach with an open mind and a loving heart. I can read your aura and take note of your worthiness. You must vow to use any newly gained knowledge for the benefit of the world and people around you. You must never tokenize or sensationalize what you experience. Do not boast. Do not be jealous of those whose gifts seem greater than yours. Appreciate what you are given and offer it to others. Do you make such a vow? We do. Spread the message, and you will find peace. And with that, he disappeared. This rite has ended. Let us go in peace. Close the gates, close the gates, close the gates. The gates are now closed. Be well, my friends. Awen. So that's my little tribute to the show Hellier. I'll leave links to it in the description box. You can also see parts 1 and 2 of my Disabled Splorer series here on YouTube, and I'll also post a link to my Mothman episode, which you might enjoy while you're here. I'm your host, author Gwen Alyce Clayton. I'd like to give special thanks to my husband Eddie, who helped capture some of the footage here today. You can learn more about me at gwenclaytonwrites.com. I drop videos every Tuesday here on the Rivervine YouTube channel. If you found this video interesting or informative, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe if you are a critical thinker with a sense of wonder. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.